Romeo Saganash was one of the class of 2011 who got elected in the Orange Crush with Jack Layton and his great unanticipated victory, you'd have to say, in making the NDP official opposition. So not many, you're well known in Quebec, but most of our Anglophone readers and website visitors from other parts of Canada wouldn't know much about you. So please start by telling us about yourself a bit.
Well, Romeo Saganash, like the rest of most of his sisters and brothers, was born in the bush on the shores of Lake Michigamis. I guess I'm the last generation of Aboriginal peoples that were born and raised in the bush. So I spent the first 6-7 years of my life in the bush with my family, my sisters and brothers, hunting, fishing, and trapping, like the rest of my family. And until I was sent to residential school. I was kidnapped by the Indian Affairs and sent off to residential school for the following 10 years. So it's been a long way for me. When I got out of residential school, I went back to the bush for another 2 years or so before heading off to law school afterwards. So I obtained my law degree in 1989. I became the Deputy Grand Chief of the Grand Council of the Cree, which is an elected position of the Grand Council of the Cree. So I did the one mandate there between 1990 and 1993, which were pretty crucial years, I must say, for the Cree people, because we were in a battle over this proposed hydroelectric development, yet another one in the Cree territory. James Bay 2. So we fought against that. There also, if you recall, the years Meech Lake Accord died, constitutional negotiations, which Charlottetown Accord. I was involved there on behalf of the Grand Council of the Cree as Deputy Grand Chief. So, and then I went on to work for the Grand Council after my mandate as Deputy Grand Chief, doing governmental relations and international affairs for them. So I've worked not only in negotiating with the governments of Quebec and Canada, but also in the discussions and negotiations that led to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. That took 23 years in the making, because we started in 1984 negotiating, discussing the declaration. It was finally adopted in September 2007 by the General Assembly of the UN. So,
still Deputy Grand Chief?
No, I was Director of Quebec Relations and International Affairs during that time. So, and now today, here I am, an MP for the NDP. So, for a kid that was born in the bush, now becoming an MP, it's been a long way, but I'm pretty honored by the trust that my constituents gave me to represent them here on Parliament Hill.
It's an utterly amazing personal story. Yeah, and your family was forcibly relocated, is that correct?
Well, most of the Cree communities were affected by the first James Bay development, in the sense that our traditional villages during the summertime had to be relocated in order to avoid flooding, because most of the major rivers in James Bay were to be flooded if Barassa had gone on with the Nottoway Broadback and Rupert projects, but eventually they changed that. But it was too late. We had most of the families had moved already. So the hydroelectric development in the early 1970s had major impacts, not only for the environment but also the social impacts for the Cree people. And even today, 35 years later, we still feel the impacts of the social impacts of what happened in the early 70s.
Of course. So you're a survivor. You survived some very difficult crises, traumatic events in your people's lives, in your own life, the residential school. Yeah. What enabled you to survive?
Resilience, very clearly. I think when I was, like I said, I was born in the bush, and one of the things that I really wanted to do was to become the great hunter that my dad was, that my grandfather was on my father's side. So I wanted to become that hunter, that great hunter. And and the rage that one feels when taken away, especially for residential school, is something that is still in me. But I think I've moved on now from the rage to try to take the best out of a very bad condition and circumstance. So I think that's how I've tackled it very early. As a matter of fact, the first 2 years I was in residential school. After a couple of months only, I arrived there only speaking Cree. But the people that worked in the residential school spoke English, and after a couple of months, I already understood what was going on, understood the language, the English language, at that time, as early as 3 or 4 months after I got there. But out of rage, I did not speak for 2 years to these people. I just stared at them, looked at them. Whenever they asked me questions, I did not answer. So for 2 years, I did that. Yeah, yes, of course, I still learned what they were trying to teach me, but I think I think that's where it clicked somehow. The first 2 years, I think the second year, the responsible person in the residential school called on us through an intercom system that they had in the residential school. And they called the Saganash family. I knew what was going on. My dad had been sick when we left that fall. And a January morning in 1971, the director of this residential school called the Saganash family to his office to announce that my father had passed away, first of all. And second of all, he said, and residential school does not have any budgets to send you guys home. So you'll have to grieve in the residential school. So from then on, I said, okay, if I'm stuck in this place, if I'm going to go through this, might as well take the best out of it and go on with life. And that's when I decided that I'd continue despite the rage and the difficulties that we went through. Every night, the first year that I got there, every night I would hear the younger ones cry every night. So it's a very difficult circumstance for anyone. So I think that's where I got my strength from.
And that enabled you to succeed academically and become the first Cree lawyer, I believe?
First Cree lawyer from Quebec to obtain a law degree in 1989. First Cree MP, of course. So I'm pretty glad about those achievements, and in the hope that I can inspire other young people and youth to do the same, because more and more with the globalization of phenomenons around the world, I think the young people, the young Aboriginals understand now that decisions regarding their destinies, their resources, their territories are taken elsewhere, in Quebec City, in Ottawa, in China, in New York, in Japan. So they're fully aware that decisions that affect them are taken elsewhere. So they need to get involved in democratic institutions like the Parliament of Canada or l'Assemblée nationale in Quebec City. So I think they are aware now of that importance to be involved. So if I can inspire some of them to become MPs in the next election, well, that's that better.
How did you get involved?
Well, every election, I guess it's a rare commodity to have a Cree that speaks Cree, English, and French. So every election, whether it was provincial or federal, all parties except the Conservatives, all parties, and don't ask me why, all parties would approach me to run for their party. And I was never ready. Jack started approaching me back in 2006. But I waited for my children to grow up, get older, and I just felt that I hadn't completed what I was supposed to do for the Cree and with the Cree. Negotiations, implementation of the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement, and so on. So I was never ready until this last election. It was in February when Jack used to call me once in a while, asking how I was doing. He would inquire about my intentions, if I had any intentions of going for it this time around. And when he called me in mid-February, when he called me, I gave him the good news. So he said, take the plane, come and see me in Toronto. We'll talk this over. So I went to see him in February. We discussed the candidacy of Romeo Saganash. I had asked him because I had spent 20 years for my work for the Grand Council of Cree in Quebec City. And I had asked him if I could run in Quebec City because I knew a lot of people there, been working there for 20 years. And he said, you know what, Romeo? You belong in the North. You belong with your people. You belong in that territory. The challenges are in that riding, whether it's climate change, environmental protection, resource development, relations with Aboriginal peoples, the future of Aboriginal peoples, water resource rights, and so on. They're all there. These global challenges that we find everywhere on this planet are also in that riding, and that riding belongs to you. So go up north.
That's something. Now, and what town do you make your home in?
Now, Val-d'Or. So I live in a riding now. I live in Val-d'Or, officially since October 1st now. So I enjoy the work that's involved. It's long hours. Once we're done here in Ottawa, when Parliament sits, we continue on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in our ridings. And I have one of the biggest ridings in the country, so it's a lot of work. Not close, very, very large riding. So I work over the weekends in my riding and come back for the session here in Ottawa. So it's a lot of work, but I'm so much enjoying this role as MP.
So Jack and you have this discussion in February, and 7 months later you declare for the leadership after, of course, this terribly tragic event of Jack's death. What took you there?
Well, many things. I thought about it thoroughly.
It was green as grass in this place.
Yeah. I thought about it thoroughly, the pros and cons of taking a decision like I did, and I think I owe it to my people. I think I owe it to Jack especially. When we talked in February, he said, "Walk with me on this one. I want to take Canada in that direction, and I'd like to have you beside me in doing that." So unfortunately, he won't be able to continue that walk with me. But I think I owe it to him to at least try. It's quite a challenge, and my mom said it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, son. She still calls me son, although I'm turning 50 at the end of the month. And yes, it does take a lot of courage, but I'm going to try. And
how will you organize your campaign?
Well,
it's especially tough for you being new to Ottawa and having a riding way up north and not having the kind of contacts that some of your people you're running against will have.
Well, I think the best approach, I've always said that I may be a rookie MP, but I'm not a rookie politician at all, with all the experience that I have. And I've worked on other leadership campaigns, including Grand Chief Kunkum's campaign several years ago, when he ran for national chief. So I'm at ease with the challenge there. I think the main challenge is to get to the grassroots, to get new members on board, and that's the focus. That's where my focus is going to be. I think all of the excellent candidates that we will have in this race, I think we all agree on the values that we need to defend as party members of the NDP, and the principles that are behind our platform, our programs, and so on. So I think we all agree on that. I think it's just a matter of working or articulating what is there for the people of Canada, and working with the grassroots along the way. That's going to be a big challenge for me. I know I'm fairly well known in Quebec, but throughout the country is another challenge for me. But I like challenges. When I entered the election last spring, um, the local media took great satisfaction in recalling that the previous election that the NDP only got 7.4%. I said, great. It's a huge challenge for me. I'm fully aware of those numbers, but I've promised myself and I've committed myself that I would work from day one to the last minute of the campaign, which I did, as a matter of fact, in spite of the polls showing that we were largely ahead in the province. I worked to the last minute, and that's what I intend to do in this leadership race.
What is the message of your leadership race? What are you going to be saying to the party, and what are you going to be offering to the party that might be unique from some of the other candidates?
Well, I don't think there will be anything unique about any of us. I think what needs to be clearly set out there is the fact that the vision that Jack had for this country has to remain, and we have to work on that. We need to start worrying about the trend that this government is taking with respect to the economy, with respect to the environment, with respect to the excluded in this country. A lot of people are excluded in this country and cannot benefit from the richness of this country. This is one of the richest countries in the world, and yet we still have Aboriginal peoples that live in fourth world conditions. We still have the poor and the elderly that are excluded in our society. So those are kind of things that we